Bienvenue! Regardez cette vidéo plus de 10 fois par jour pour apprendre la langue. Commençons!
Cinderella is one of the most popular and beloved stories worldwide. Although most people associate it with Disney's 1950 animated film, its origins are much older and have transcended cultures, languages, and generations. The story of a mistreated young woman who manages to change her destiny through a miraculous event has been told in multiple ways, yet it always retains its essence: perseverance, kindness, and triumph over adversity. Disney's version, based on Charles Perrault's tale published in 1697, is the most famous in modern popular culture. However, this story did not originate in France, nor with Perrault's pen. Its narrative structure, which involves an orphaned girl oppressed by her stepmother and stepsisters, but eventually rewarded through a magical transformation, appears in tales from different eras and parts of the world. From ancient China to the Egypt of the pharaohs, Cinderella's figure has appeared in countless versions, adapting to the customs and beliefs of each society. Beyond being just a fairy tale, Cinderella has left an imprint on literature, cinema, and culture in general. Its impact is not limited to childhood. It has also been used as a metaphor to describe real-life stories of overcoming hardships. The idea of a person who, despite facing great obstacles, achieves success through effort and a little external help has become a recurring symbol in contemporary narratives, from film to literature and the media. Although the most well-known version of Cinderella is Charles Perrault's, the story has roots dating back thousands of years. One of the earliest recorded versions comes from ancient Egypt, around the 1st century BCE, with the legend of Rhodopis, a Greek slave who, due to her extraordinary beauty, is mistreated by her companions. According to the story, while bathing in the river, an eagle stole one of her sandals and dropped it into the lap of the pharaoh. Fascinated by the delicacy of the slipper, the ruler ordered a search for its owner, and upon finding her, he made her his wife. Centuries later, in 9th century China, another similar version appears in the story of Ye Xian, an orphaned young woman mistreated by her stepmother. In this narrative, a magical fish, representing the spirit of her mother, grants her an elegant dress to attend a festival. When Ye Xian loses her golden shoe, the king finds it, and upon discovering that it belongs to her, he decides to marry her. Unlike the Western version, there is no fairy godmother here, but rather a supernatural element linked to the Chinese tradition of ancestor worship. In Europe, one of the oldest versions is that of Giambattista Basile, who wrote La Gatta Cenerentola in the 17th century. In this version, the protagonist, named Zezola, suffers abuse from her stepmother and stepsisters, but receives help from a fairy who lives in a magical tree. Unlike Perrault's version, this story has a darker tone and includes fantastical elements reflecting the superstitions of the time. Each of these narratives presents common elements: a young woman oppressed by her family, magical assistance, and a transformation that allows her to change her destiny. However, the cultural differences in each version show how each society interpreted the story, adapting it to its own beliefs and values. Cinderella's story took the form we know today thanks to Charles Perrault, who in 1697 published Cendrillon ou la petite pantoufle de verre. Unlike previous versions, this adaptation introduced key elements that would become iconic in the tale: the fairy godmother, the pumpkin turned into a carriage, the mice transformed into horses, and the glass slipper. Perrault not only made the story more magical, but also softened the violent aspects present in earlier versions. In his version, Cinderella is a sweet and kind young woman who never seeks revenge against her stepmother and stepsisters, but rather forgives them when she marries the prince. This approach reflected the values of 17th century French society, where courtesy and kindness were highly regarded virtues. However, when the Brothers Grimm collected their version of the tale in the 19th century, the story took on a much darker tone. In Aschenputtel, Cinderella receives help from a magical tree planted on her mother's grave instead of a fairy godmother. Moreover, the punishment for the stepsisters is brutal. In their attempt to fit into the golden slipper, One cuts off her toes, and the other mutilates her heel. In the end, as divine retribution, pigeons peck out their eyes during Cinderella's wedding to the prince. Both versions reflect the mindset of their respective eras. While Perrault's story was intended for the French nobility and emphasized the importance of grace and generosity, the Grimm version was aimed at a broader audience and retained the raw tone of folktales orally transmitted in Germany. Despite their differences, both versions solidified the essential elements of the tale and served as a foundation for future adaptations. Over time, Cinderella's message evolved, moving away from the harshness of the original tales to become a more accessible and optimistic story, especially with the advent of film and animation. Cinderella's transition to cinema marked a turning point in its history, establishing it as one of the most influential fairy tales in popular culture. The most iconic version is Walt Disney's animated film, released in 1950. Based primarily on Charles Perrault's version, this adaptation removed any dark or violent elements, transforming it into a story of perseverance with a strong message of hope and kindness. In Disney's film, Cinderella is an optimistic young woman who, despite her stepmother and stepsister's abuse, maintains faith in a better future. The fairy godmother, talking mice, and magic play a crucial role in her transformation, reinforcing the idea that dreams can come true with patience and perseverance. The success of this version not only revitalized Disney's company after World War II, but also set the standard for future fairy tale adaptations in cinema. Over the years, Cinderella has been reinterpreted multiple times, both in animation and live-action films. In 1997, Disney released a television version starring Brandy Norwood and Whitney Houston, notable for its diverse cast and modern take on the story. In 2015, the company launched a live-action adaptation directed by Kenneth Branagh, which maintained the essence of the animated version but delved deeper into the emotional background of the characters, especially Cinderella's relationship with her mother before she passed away. Cinderella's legacy remains strong today. Its message of hope and perseverance has transcended generations, becoming a universal metaphor for those facing hardships and dreaming of a better future. Although versions have changed over time, the essence of the story remains intact. The idea that kindness and perseverance can lead to a happy ending.
Nous sommes arrivés à la fin. N'oubliez pas de liker et de vous abonner à la chaîne. Pensez à la regarder plusieurs fois pour mieux maîtriser la langue.